Rangers Journal Day.
Yes, hello, a very, very warm welcome to everybody. This is the Rangers Journal, but it's the Rangers Journal with a little bit of a twist. So yes, this is a new show, which is going to be on the Rangers Journal network. We're hopefully looking at around about maybe once a month, and it is about movies and TVs. Yeah, we are Box Office Bears, and this is the Podders all-time top 5 movies. So we've compiled a list of our favourite top, well, it's a very difficult list to put together, but our favourite top 5 movies. Now, as much as we love to watch Rangers, and yes, supporting them is a bit like watching a National Lampoon's film sometimes, or a harrowing drama, I guess, especially. But of course, a good few of us like to unwind with a bit of cinema and TV. So you know, we got to get rid of that stress from these Rangers performances somehow. And there's nothing better than relaxing to a horror like Terrifier, or you know, to make us feel better about a 1-1 draw at McDiarmid Park, is there? So join me on this today. We have got, first of all, Stevie. How you doing, Stevie?
I'm good, mate. Good evening to you both. Hope you're well.
Hi, good evening to you, Stevie. So obviously we were looking about a week ago at compiling the lists of movies. How did you find compiling the list, your all-time top 5 movies?
Yeah, really difficult. I could have had a top 20 and we still had difficulties in choosing it down to 20, to be fair. There's so many that I've had to leave out and I'm like, God, how's that not on my list? Really difficult, but yeah, I've picked the 5 best that I think, so we'll see what you reckon. I think they're great, but yeah, we'll see.
Have you always had a number 1 top movie?
Yeah, Godfather 2.
Oh, you're ruining it now.
Sorry. Yep.
No, that's good. That's good. It's actually it's one of the few sequels that it's a member of that exclusive club, isn't it? Where it could be argued it's definitely, you know, better than the original film that was before it. So it's maybe part of a unique club, that one. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see a top 5 very shortly. And we've also got joining us here Doug, who's looking like a very suave director right now, like he's on set. He's got the Jurassic Park hat on. Spielberg in the making. How you doing, Doug?
I'm not too bad, thanks. Looking forward to hearing your top 5s.
Oh, do you know, it is good, interesting. I'm really interested to look into this. Doug, how was it putting your top 5 together? Was it a top 5 you had in your head already, or like Stevie, was it, you know, quite difficult?
Yeah, I mean, like Stevie said, it's a difficult thing to do. I could do a top 5 across the genres, never mind anything else. And I'm lucky, like Stevie, I've got a number 1 that I've had for quite a few years now. The middle pack are kind of ones that kind of shuffle. But arguably, I actually found putting the 5th film in the hardest, because by the time I've kind of done the top ones were always kind of up there, but then you've just got then about 800 other movies that could potentially slip into number 5. So yeah, if we do an honourable mentions, the pod will last another 20 minutes. But it's yeah, it was difficult to get that last 5th one. Plus the what criteria as well. Is an interesting one. That was something we didn't really talk about. Do I pick the ones that are just my favourite? Do I pick the ones that I think are the best cinematically or movie like? Do I balance the two? I've kind of gone for a little bit of balance of the two. So yeah, there's just there's so much to think of.
Do you know, that's exactly what I've done in a sense with some of the film choices. Some are brilliant stories in their own right, and some it's the visuals, it's the cinematography kind of keeps you gripped. And sometimes, you know, I've always said sometimes you don't need a massive budget to make a movie. You know, I think we've seen that a lot from I don't know if you guys enjoy like the odd Film 4 movie. Film 4 for me are kind of one of the best kind of British makers of movies. You know, you get a lot of kind of really hard hitting harrowing stories, a lot of course set in Glasgow and the west of Scotland, obviously a lot set in Northern England, and I think they are just very good at getting, once you have a decent story and some great actors to portray it. I think Ken Loach was always good at that, and I think, you know, you don't always need that multi-million-dollar budget with special effects and everything. Sometimes you just need a bit of hard, gritty substance. But yeah, no, this will be a good insight to everyone, because obviously everybody at home's used to seeing us ranting about Rangers. You know, we do praise Rangers sometimes, of course, but this season it's been far between. So this is going to be a little bit of seeing the other side of the curtain, so to speak. So what we'll do, I'll go first. I'm going to go in with my top 5. And I'll get your guys' opinions. And guys at home, get your opinions in the comments. Put your top 5 in the comments. And what we can do is, I know this is recorded, but I'll go through the comments over the week. And you know what? We can have some questions in the next show as well. So, right. Now, spoiler alert before we go any further. Of course, there might be some spoilers for some of these films. You might not have seen them. We might talk about scenes. So, just to warn you, but got to be honest, if the films in our top 5, it's very likely that most people have seen them, but you never know, you never know. So, yeah, spoiler alert. If you do hear a film that you haven't seen before, then, yeah, beware, beware.
And sell it to us.
Yeah, so let's say, yeah, I'm pitching, you know, Doug, the director. I'm the guy off the street that's got a script and I'm hoping it's £2 million. Right, so now my kind of, I've always loved movies growing up. It's just something that I've always done. I've always kind of, as well, in some respects, worked around movies. I used to be a manager for Blockbuster back in the day, and I used to work at the Comic Cons as well, up and down the country. So, you know, I got to meet some famous people, and it was quite cool. It was very good. So, you know, I grew up, especially with Blockbuster. You know, I had the free rentals, absolutely used and abused them. So I used to watch as much as I could. And you start realizing some of these kind of very obscure films that you would find with one copy of, like on the bottom of a shelf. You go, actually, that was quite good. You know, I've not seen it, not heard about that. So it kind of opened my eyes to the kind of what cinema has. It's not just the mainstream stuff like you'll get, you know, The Rock in some movie, like Skyscraper. You know, it's never going to win an Oscar, but it will make a lot of money in the box office because it's, you know, a heavily kind of promoted movie. But yeah, I think that's where I saw, for example, you know, The Machinist, absolutely fantastic film. Christian Bale, one of his best performances. He dropped to like 6 stone, and it's just a fantastic kind of psychological thriller that kind of messes with your head. And you know, you just look at the acting in that. You just look at the way it was put together, the way it was filmed. I probably would have seen that if it wasn't for me working at Blockbuster. So it kind of gave me a bit of an insight into a lot of the movies. But now I'm going to go with my top 5. I'm going to start. So number 5, it is rated 8.6 out of 10 on IMDb. It's got 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, which you know, is quite high. Silence of the Lambs. I'm assuming you guys both seen that, of course.
Yeah.
I don't even know why. Of course, you gentlemen, you find it distinctive gentlemen of the movie world, of course, will have seen that. So, of course, psychological thriller. For me, it was a thriller that had everything. Released in 1991, of course, from the Thomas Harris novel. You had different characters kind of on very different paths. You had Hannibal Lecter, not the movie's main nemesis in a sense, but a nemesis in his own right, you know, with his sickening crimes that he'd done, which kind of gets uncovered more and more throughout the film. You had Clarice Starling, young FBI agent, played by Jodie Foster, who was brilliant as a fresh-faced FBI agent who had the innocence of a kind of newbie at their job. All while she's trying to get into the head of Buffalo Bill, who was a serial killer that had kidnapped a senator's daughter. And she's obviously trying to use Hannibal Lecter for his kind of insight into the mind of a killer to try and find where Buffalo Bill could be, what his next moves could be. So yeah, no, absolutely fantastic film in its own right. Stevie, do you have any memories of Silence of the Lambs?
Yeah, really, really top film, mate. Like you say, proper psychological thriller. I actually watched Manhunter, I think, before I seen my dad. I think my dad let me watch when I was about 10-year-old, and it scared the absolute hell out of me. Watch it now, and it's not that scary, but when you're a kid, Michael Mann and Brian Cox's Hannibal Lecter was phenomenal. A lot of people can forget that.
Do you know, so he is the original Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah,
and of course,
and it was really good.
What was the guy's name from CSI that was in it? As the FBI, I can't remember.
Yeah, the redhead guy.
Yeah, but of course, Brian Cox, the original Hannibal Lecter. That's a bit of a strange one. You don't really think of that, do you?
Anthony Hopkins, he obviously took it on and made it what it is, essentially. They kind of built a franchise around them. But yeah, really tremendous. It kind of reminded me, like now looking back, I think it's quite like David Fincher's films. It's got that kind of tone to it. But yeah, really brilliant. Probably the best film of that year. One of the best films of that year.
Yeah, I think it was 1991, I think it was,
Yeah,
when
one.
that was released. Yeah, and it was funny because allegedly Gene Hackman bought the rights to the novel, and he basically came up with a script for it and was going to play Lecter. So I don't know what happened there. I've not really done too much research into that, but maybe he just sold the rights, and it was picked up. But originally it was going to be him and Orion were going to make the film. So that would have been interesting as Gene Hackman as Hannibal Lecter. But Doug, Memories of Silence of the Lambs, is it up there for you?
Yeah, like I said, a top quality thriller, really good movie. I've not actually seen it for a while, but the thing that really sticks in the memory is the performances from Foster and Hopkins. I just think that they're so on point, and really take the film, I think, to the next level. There's just certain films, I think, at times where you get the right people for the right roles, and they just really, really hit. And this is a film for me where that kind of is the case, and in particular those scenes between the two of them are just so electric and so gripping when you're watching it. It's genuinely kind of like can't take your eyes away kind of stuff, and you've got the classic quotable bits from Lecter in it as well that I think are always a hallmark of a good film. Always relate that to someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger. When people say he's not a good actor, I'm like, well, I bet you can quote 101 lines from his movies, so he must be doing something right. Not to compare Anthony Hopkins and Schwarzenegger in terms of acting, but that's the thing that kind of I think really hits home for me is those two in those roles were just absolutely spot on.
I totally agree. If I remember right, his line was to Clarice Starling, "You dancing?" And she goes, "Yes." I think it was something like that, wasn't it? Yeah, that was it, wasn't it? Terrible joke. But yeah, so the thing for me is, Lecter, he was a serial killer, obviously a borderline insane one at that. Cannibal, of course. However, he's a clever and intelligent man. So it kind of broke down some of the boundaries of what a serial killer is. You're used to seeing in movies a serial killer being that kind of creepy guy living in their mum's basement with long greasy hair. That was kind of what American movie serial killers were. So it kind of broke that mold, didn't it? Not too dissimilar to kind of Patrick Bateman in American Psycho in that respect as well. Somebody that highly intelligent, well-to-do, not somebody you'd look at as a serial killer. The characterization for me, it broke the mold. There were, I think as well, seeing him working with Clarice. I say working, obviously, he didn't really have much of a choice in the matter. He had his own motives. He was looking to try and escape. But they were two people that were very far removed from each other in many more ways than one. But of course, so he started to have a bit of an obsession with her. She started to have you could see it in a sense that she was starting to have a little bit of an obsession with him, which obviously is something that kind of gets looked at a little bit in Hannibal, which is obviously kind of a follow-up novel. Obviously played by Julianne Moore, obviously different type of film, different director, very different path it went on. But big shout out for me to Ted Levine in this, who plays Buffalo Bill. I never realised for years that he played the cop in Monk. If you ever seen the TV show Monk, he played the cop in that. You would not associate the two together. So, infamous scene, of course, in front of the mirror with Goodbye Horses playing. It's absolutely freaky, but at the same time, we've all done it, haven't we? Or haven't we, Stevie? Haven't we? We've all been in front of that mirror doing that. But yeah, massive credit to Jodie Foster, like Doug says. Absolutely fantastic. The cinematography is brilliant. Cold, dark atmosphere. Kept you at the edge of your seat. So big credit to the director. I think it was Jonathan. Was it Dime? I can never pronounce his name right, but yeah. There we go. So that was my number 5. So my number 4, which is starring somebody that Doug has already said is somebody that's a very quotable person. And of course, it is I'll Be Back. It is The Terminator. Rated 8.1 on IMDb and a 100% score on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't think I've ever seen that on Rotten Tomatoes, but there we go. Low budget sci-fi thriller at the time. that was ahead of its time. On the outset, it appears to be a run-of-the-mill 80s B movie. However, Schwarzenegger's just a perfect casting for the unstoppable cyborg, hell-bent on killing Sarah Connor, of course, played by Linda Hamilton. Not the biggest cast in the movie, not the biggest budget, but it just seemed to work. Stevie, The Terminator is up there for you?
Yeah, it's a classic. It really is. I don't know, like a lot of people, I think I saw Terminator 2 first and then went back. And then when you see T2 first and then it's proper stripped back, it's a better story. It's a better all-round film. I know T2 like was enormous, like James Cameron, like big budget, but his first one, it was just such a good story. It pulls you in right at the start, and you're kind of immersed. I think the best films always pull you right in, and that was the feeling you got for Terminator. And a big Arnie, obviously, he steals the show. He's that bad guy, but he's funny with it. Absolutely perfect casting. What you mentioned before, it's kind of like really. There was more substance to Terminator 1 than Terminator 2. It was just a better told story. Yeah, I loved that as a kid. Fantastic film. I've watched it again quite recently. And I probably feel the same now as what I did then. I probably like it more the more times you watch it.
Do you know, it was just the 80s. We were very good at making good B movies in the 80s. I think now when you look at B movies, a lot of them are very poor quality, very cheaply made. You look back to the 80s and that was it was the golden era for kind of B movies into the early 90s as well. I just like the fact that it was, as a film, it's just put together very well. It's unstoppable cyborg. It's your worst nightmare. When I was a kid and saw it, I had nightmares of just an unstoppable guy coming after you, because Schwarzenegger he just absolutely put the absolute fear into you. Doug, the Terminator, what memories? Do you prefer it over the second one?
I actually prefer the second one. Not the Terminator and Terminator 2 occupy for me a very, very unique sort of position. Kind of similar to what you were talking about with Godfather 1 and 2 in terms of, you know, and something I will touch on later in my top 5 as well. So that might be a hint to what I'm going to get to. Is that, you know, these are two films that I think are of equal quality, but there's just, you know, there's certain differences that I think ultimately will lead you to one or the other purely down to your personal preference. And I mean, one of the things I love about Terminator 2 is it tells the exact same story as the first film, but at no point you're never sitting there going, oh, this is boring, or this is the same thing again, because of the subtle things that are adjusted. So obviously the big twist about Arnie being the good guy, which I can't believe was a part of, like, I watched Terminator 2 just sort of like without, you know, trailers or anything like that, because I was older by the time I got to it. But having seen the trailers for it on YouTube, they give that away in the trailer. And I'm like, why would you do that? I can't imagine how amazing it would have been to be in the cinema and seen that. But anyway, back to the first one, an absolute classic. One of my favorite films of all time. Doesn't quite make my top 5, but it easily could have done on another day. I think Schwarzenegger, like you say, was absolutely perfect. You know, he's massive. He's an absolute machine in every sense of the word. And as well as that, I think he really got the role. There's stories about how he spent hours and hours and hours taking apart and putting back together the guns that he was going to be using, and just sort of playing about with them and getting used to them, because he wanted to be able to use them without a second thought, because that's how a machine would work with them. You know, the machine doesn't need to look down to check if its finger's in the right place or to flick a switch. It would just do it. So he spent the time to do that, to really get that mannerism right, which I think really speaks to the role. And one of my favorite film facts is actually a Terminator fact. The fact that the original person up to be the Terminator was O.J. Simpson, but that he wasn't cast because they didn't think he'd be a believable killer. So that's one of my favorite movie trivia of all time. But yeah, absolute classic without a doubt, and easily an acceptable choice for any top 5, I think.
Do you know what? I've got a fact as well, because there was somebody else that was also cast as the Terminator. Somebody I've actually had a drink with before in the past. Lance Henriksen, who is a police officer in the movie. He's not in it much. It's kind of probably about 10 minutes in the whole film. but he was also originally cast as the Terminator. And then, of course, it ended up going to Arnie, which is completely understandable because I don't know how. Obviously, Lance Henriksen has experience of playing kind of like a cyborg per se in Alien, but I don't think he'd have been as convincing as the unstoppable kind of machine. You look at Arnie and you go, "Oh, wouldn't want to walk into him in a dark alleyway, would you?" The film is just brilliant. It's cold, it's dark, and it's especially the early days of the kind of internet. In a sense, obviously nobody really had the internet at all then, but obviously you're starting to get computing system, you're starting to get intranets, email was kind of starting the early embers of that, and it's fear of AI and technology taking over. And obviously they go into that way more into Terminator 2. I still love Terminator 2. It's a fantastic film. Obviously, it was a very bold move, flipping Arnie to be the good guy, which you think, oh, wow, bold move considering he's the bad guy in the first one. And also the changes to Linda Hamilton. She absolutely bulked up in that second film. And obviously was very convincing as somebody that had been in prison training to, you know, take on this when it eventually comes back. So, yeah, no,
I think,
absolutely love the Terminator.
Just to chime in just quickly on the Terminator 2 point there, the thing that I really, really loved about Terminator 2 as well is that they managed to find someone in Robert Patrick who became a even more dangerous antagonist. Like, I looked at him and went, yeah, I am genuinely more afraid of you than Arnie. And given that Arnie is this absolute massive tank, you know, he's the sports car to the tank that Arnie is. And the way he just got the look down, and he did the same thing that Arnie does for the first one, and that he really, really went into the role. He learned to not blink when he was reading lines. He learned to not flinch when he was shooting guns. And for the bit where he has to, there's a wee bit when he first meets the kid and he has to chase him, he got it so that he could run really quickly in a really kind of robotic way.
That
and
is impressive, actually.
He ran so fast that he actually caught up with the motorbike, and they had to get him to slow down because he'd gotten himself so dialed in. And I just think, like, it's just so. I think sometimes he gets a little bit under mentioned because the stars of the film are Arnie and Linda Hamilton, but he is absolutely superb. Arguably, he would be one of my top 5 for greatest antagonists of all time. Absolutely superb.
Do you know what? I've met Robert Patrick as well, and I actually told him the story of when I first saw Terminator 2 on like a dodgy videotape that was passed around a few years, and he did say, "Wow, your parents let you watch that?" Wow, and I think he just basically thought, "Oh yeah, I've got bad parents," but there we go. Yeah, Terminator, absolutely brilliant for me, definitely in my top 5. My number 3, my third choice, it was one I changed. I originally had Alien in there. I love Alien, goes in space, but this one had to be in there for not just the story, but its kind of portrayal of a dystopian future. The fact it's got an amazing soundtrack, probably one of the best soundtracks that ever accompanied a movie. It's got 8.1 out of 10 on IMDb. It's got 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's Blade Runner. Film noir, moody visuals at its best. Harrison Ford, you know, as a kind of cop in a sense, Deckard, a Blade Runner, if you will, somebody that kind of hunts replicants who are causing problems. Obviously, Rutger Hauer had a fantastic performance in that movie. And do you know what? When that film came out, it was heavily criticized for its bleak look, its lack of action. It was very slow because it's filmed in that film noir style. And it was probably just too dystopian for audiences back in the 80s. Basically, for me, I think as an all-round film, I think it does have everything. Obviously, action, there's little bits. It's probably not an action movie, but it's just a very well-told story about a police officer in a snapshot of time in the future when just everything is a little bit miserable. But Stevie, Blade Runner, are you a fan?
Yeah, big fan. Was a huge Harrison Ford fan growing up, so obviously Star Wars, the indie films. And I was a wee bit older, my dad's like, right, we're going to watch Blade Runner. And it was something completely new. You know, it was like, wow, what is this? I just remember loving it, probably about 12 or 13, and it was really kind of blew me away. Tried to watch it again quite recently. Obviously, after having kids, I'm kind of half knackered all the time, and I fell asleep, and I was like, why am I falling asleep here? But got through it, it was, you know, such a different original type film. I quite liked the sequel as well, to be fair. I quite enjoyed that. Really good, well shot, cinematography amazing. Great performances again. But yeah, Blade Runner was a cult classic, I would call it.
Oh, 100%. And actually, when you speak of 2049 sequel, when you hear Ryan Gosling cast, you think, oh, I don't know. You don't know. But then you watch it and you think, you know what? It was cast brilliantly. It's a brilliant film in its own right. And it's very rare that you get a sequel 20 odd, 30 odd years later that actually stands up. And that is rare. So, yeah, no, definitely very good. Doug, Blade Runner, are you a fan?
Yes, absolutely. I would consider Blade Runner to modern science fiction as the Rolling Stones are to rock and roll. Everything traces back to that point. It's such a massively influential movie to the sci-fi that came after it, in almost every way, in terms of storytelling, mood, design, characterization, the sort of rise of popularity of films about or including sort of androids or cybernetic characters and things like that. Just so much influence through the cinema that we come after. And like you said, it's you touched on Alien. Alien is arguably my favorite film of all time in terms of the internal universe's design, in terms of the actual aesthetics and like the iconography and the way that sort of the world is. And Blade Runner is right up there in that sort of aspect as well. I've got a book just like about the artwork of Blade Runner and sort of the designs and things like that, because it is something that I can sit and look at even aside from the film itself, because I just think it's although it's a like that kind of dark, gritty, like neo noir future dystopian future is really my kind of thing. Like the sort of Cyberpunk 2077 as well, which is, you know, there's plenty of Blade Runner influence in that game.
There is.
So, you know, that kind of thing is something I'm a huge fan of. And as I say, Blade Runner absolutely ticks every box if you're that kind of person.
And you know what, it stands up as well. There's a few films on 4K. If you are a bit of a cinephile at home, 4K is the way forward. Remastered movies, properly done. Alien are one of them where it just looks like it was filmed yesterday. Filmed nicely, nice white backgrounds. You look at Blade Runner and how it looks on film, all remastered. It just looks absolutely phenomenal. It really does stand up. A lot of them rainy scenes, absolutely brilliant. But yeah, absolutely love it. Everything, it's just got everything. It's not just an atmospheric great movie. Obviously, there's a little bit of action in there as well, and it's a love story as well. It's a love story, and
excellent
the soundtrack,
dialogue.
Vangelis, yeah, excellent dialogue, absolutely fantastically written dialogue, and lots of quiet scenes where it kind of builds up the tension. And just Vangelis' soundtrack, Vangelis, absolutely fantastic. Electronic music creators, they kind of mix that kind of almost noir music, you know, music kind of 30 style music with synthesizer and stuff. Absolutely brilliant. Do absolutely love it. Right, I'm getting my top two now. I know I've been talking for absolute ages. I want to make sure you guys get your valuable airtime to air your top fives and give it the attention it deserves. So I'm going to rattle through these two now. So my number two is a horror film, and it was Stanley Kubrick's first horror film, his first delve into the kind of horror kind of franchise. And it's The Shining, of course, Stephen King's The Shining. Obviously a bit more of a mainstream movie for Stanley. You can see he's inspired many future directors with this. Like, you could argue David Lynch was probably inspired a little bit by some of the way that the visuals were, the kind of like the carpet in the corridor. Obviously the lad on the tricycle being followed around in the corridors. Jack Nicholson is just phenomenal as he plays Jack. I forget the second name in it now, but he does play Jack. And just seeing his descent from fairly normal guy with some issues into somebody that's just going slowly insane to the point where he's going to kill his family. But it's just absolutely, it's well filmed, it's amazingly done, and it really does grip you. And as horror films go, I did watch it again year before last on Halloween. They were re-showing it at the local cinema, and it was just fantastic to watch it at Halloween on the big screen. Stevie, The Shining, is that your cup of tea?
Stephen King, so yeah, I think he's a brilliant writer. It's maybe not my favourite of his. The Stand, I think The Stand is always kind of like missed out in the proper like big budget great film that it deserves. But yeah, The Shining is like you kind of surmised it perfectly there. Jack is just like a force of nature in that film. He's so good to watch, and like you say, the kind of progression to kind of madness. Especially being a Rangers fan this season, you're kind of starting to lose your head a bit. But yeah, he's really good.
Definitely.
It's quite chilling. It kind of always unsettles you. However many times you've watched it, it still gets you.
It's like as well, you can see Shelley Duvall. Obviously, she was fantastic in that film. She didn't actually work again in movies after that. Allegedly, the way that Kubrick is and the way that he directs, he likes a lot of things to be natural. And she was genuinely scared in some of them scenes. She was actually going a little bit crazy herself. I remember she was saying in an interview. Some of them screams and stuff, she is just natural, which just says something. But absolutely brilliant from her as well with that film. Doug, is this Jack Nicholson's best movie for you? And are you a fan of The Shining? I would assume you are. So,
yeah, it's actually I've not seen it in so long. I don't actually remember it in great detail. In terms of sort of the ins and outs, but again, I mean, it's such an iconic movie. There's so many scenes that come to mind that I can still remember. In terms of like the sort of the shots and the makeup of the shots, the colors, and the design of that. Shelley Duvall, a great year that year. She was in the Shining and Popeye. In that year, so I mean, what a great year.
built a whole town for that,
in
didn't they?
movies. Yeah. So she was doing great things. Best Jack Nicholson film, probably not for me. Just in terms of personal preference, it's not necessarily to say it's not his best film. It quite possibly is, but I'm a huge fan of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And so
yes.
personally, I would if I was told pick one film, would potentially pick that. I'm also a big fan of the I was about to say the original Batman, but it's not the original Batman. Adam West made a Batman movie as well, and I'm a big fan of that as well. He's excellent as the Joker. So I would potentially pick those two above it, but that's, as I say, just their personal preference. I would have no huge arguments if someone was to say it's his best movie. I think you could easily say that's the case.
Yeah, no, definitely. I do agree actually, because I'm not really big into comic books, but I do like Batman films, and I do like a couple of the Spider-Mans, and for me, Batman's the thing that really does grip me because it's quite dark, and I do think
it's the design for me of those original ones.
Yes,
like I talked about, like
Tim Burton's
I'm
Gothic.
really into the design.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just...
I do as well. I think Burton created this good Gothic version of Gotham City, and I think it just all works, especially Batman Returns. Of course, Danny DeVito, just absolutely fantastic in that. Right, my number one film of all time, Shot at Glory, Alec Oyster. No, I'm joking. In my number one all-time movie, I would say it's Psycho. I know it's probably on the top of a lot of people's lists, but it was a movie that was way ahead of its time. Obviously, it's a film that focuses on a woman who rips off her boss, is running away. You're kind of thinking, is she going to get caught? What's going to happen? And then, boom, halfway through the film, she gets murdered in a hotel. And then the story just flips completely 180, and you start then following Norman Bates and his kind of his weird setup there, the fact that obviously he seems to be being controlled by his mother, which obviously turns out to be him, which again for the 1960s was a fantastic. This was the thing, just the rule book was torn up for movies back then. Really, you had to kind of, not necessarily a fixed format for movies, but you would kind of conform to list. And Psycho, Hitchcock just was a genius at just taking a story and making the audience go, oh wow, oh my god. And it's one of them films, it's up there with Jaws score. You know, you had the score, you could argue, makes that whole shower scene. Of course, Jamie Lee Curtis's mother, I forgot her name now, I don't know why. Oh my god. Janet Leigh, that's it. Absolutely fantastic in that. And again, a film that was just way ahead of its time. 1960 as well. It would have absolutely horrified audiences at the time. Stevie, Psycho, is it a film that you enjoyed? Is it a film you've enjoyed when you've seen it?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I watched it when I was probably about 15, 16, and it was quite shocking. I was like, wow, like, kind of surmised it. It was really just not what you were expecting. Obviously, by that time, it was well publicised and it was such a famous film. Funny you just saying that about the shower scene, actually. It's jogged my memory. I won, you get these radio competitions where they play a clip of a scene, and it was like the shower scene. It was like text in for Primal Scream tickets. So I texted in, drive it just a long time ago, and they announced my name on the radio. I was like, wow, got Primal Scream tickets off of Psycho. So it was pretty cool. There was like 100 people. It was like a tiny intimate gig. It was pretty cool. But yeah,
it's pretty good actually. There you go. So you've got Hitchcock to thank for that. There we go. You got to go see Primal Scream. But never seen Hitchcock and Primal Scream in the same sentence. But there we go. Doug, Psycho. Is it Hitchcock's finest work? Just to put you on the spot there.
Yeah, I mean that's a question. I'm trying to. I mean, again, I think you could easily say so. He's obviously he's a guy who's got a lot of great movies, but I think I'm just trying to think of a couple off the top of my head. If there's one that jumps out, he's made so many as well. No.
Yeah, I think he was before that.
I've got a list. I'm a big fan of Rear Window. I must admit, actually.
Oh yeah.
So I would maybe put Rear Window ahead of it. Just again, that's probably just my personal preference, but again, I mean, absolute classic. Another film that's just so influential to its genre. So many like just sort of long and slow build-ups to sudden shock moments. You can argue there's no one that's done it better since, in a way. Anthony Perkins, probably his best film. He's superb from start to finish. So yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't be uncomfortable going along with that being his best, Hitchcock's best. It's as I say, again, just an absolute classic.
Absolute classic indeed. And actually, I've got the box set of the other films as well. There was a couple of straight-to-TV movies, and surprisingly, Psycho 4, which has Anthony Perkins in it, surprisingly a good film for what it is. Obviously, it was a straight-to-TV movie, but if you do get a chance, watch the sequels. They're lesser known, but they are good films in their own right, and they kind of explain a bit of the story. So, yeah, that's my top 5. If you agree in the comments, say why. If you don't agree, say why. Give us your top 5 as well, and on the next show we'll get some of them read out as well. So Stevie, let's hear your top 5. What are your top 5 movies of all time?
Okay, mate, I'm going to do this in the 1 to 5. I'm going to start with my top, if that's okay. I've already said what it is, so I may as well go with it. So yeah, Godfather Part 2. Like, I loved the first movie. Like, first film was like timeless. Like, Brando, just so good. James Caan, like, it's a great film, but ultimately it tells a narrative-oriented story that focuses on the consequences, like a business deal or a drug deal gone bad. The second film is much more sprawling and far darker in tone. I feel like it nudges on some like huge philosophical touchstones, like the loss of Michael's soul. There's also the contrast, like ingenious contrast, I would say, in the second film, where you've got flashbacks, like back to kind of Vito coming to America as a boy, like growing up and his rise to power with his family, like having his kids and whatnot. It's all going really well. And then decades later, you've got Michael, which is brilliantly portrayed. He's basically on the way down. He loses so much that, like, he loses his wife, he loses another brother, his sister hates him. You contrast that with the kind of, there's a post-credit scene in 2 where it switches back to before the first film, when he's sitting about with all his brothers, his sister, Carlo, his dad's in the next room. It's where he says he's going to like join to fight World War II, and he's lost all of that, and it's so brutal, and it's like, it's quite hard to watch, but it's so well told. I'd say there's like a kind of sheer like thematic gravity the second film that the first film doesn't have. Like I say, it's quite sad, but like the way it's told over time, like that contrast between early 20th century America and then when it's on the way down, it's so well done. He's basically almost taken over like the government in Cuba, like Michael, before it all goes wrong there. And it's like, you've got all this kind of historical backdrop. It's such a good story, and it's so well told. I think it's one of the few films where it kind of does the book justice. I read a lot of books. Whenever I read a book and then you watch the film, it very rarely does it justice. I think maybe Shawshank is one that kind of works. Shawshank Redemption is like, does it justice, and Godfather. But it's so hard to kind of, portray that. But Godfather 2 does it.
I do love the Godfather movies. Even the third one, I was saying, I know the third one, there's a lot of dialogue in it. There's a lot of kind of scenes. Obviously, it's set later, I think the 90s, isn't it? And it kind of cuts back and forward. Obviously, the second one, great at setting how Vito Corleone kind of arrived in New York as a young child, wasn't he? And it's just a cast. But Robert Duvall, you got Pacino. It just kind of paved the way for how mob films were made, and it kind of shows you the way that kind of how different mob families intertwined. Obviously, you had was it the Jewish mob in that film as well, which were heavily involved. Just an absolutely fantastic films of their own right, and they're given the runtime that they deserve as well. A lot of films were kind of rooted to 90 minutes so they could get more runs in the cinema, and they give it the time that it deserved. I think the third one gets kind of unfairly treated a little bit. People class it as an absolutely terrible movie. I think it's a good movie and it's all right. It's just that the Godfather 2 and Godfather are just such good films. It's very rare. Again, like I said earlier, there's that exclusive club that only a handful of movies belong to, where the sequel is better than the first. You've got probably Empire Strikes Back. It's one of their rare ones. Obviously the Godfather, and there's only probably another couple of films as well that meet that, but no, Godfather.
The guy that plays Fredo, John Cazale, I think he had about 6 films and he got Oscar nominated for 5 of them. His performances are just, every film he's in, he's so good. But it's like I say, it's timeless. It's just phenomenal.
It is. Doug, Godfather 2, are you into your mob movies?
This is where I get shot. I have never seen Godfather Part 2.
Dun, dun, dun.
I know that's my friendship with Stevie over now. It's not that I dislike. I've seen the first one. Again, it was a long time ago. I don't remember it in great detail. But I don't think it's. I've not avoided seeing it in anything. I've just never. I don't know why, to be honest. I've just never seen it. I do remember of The Godfather, and the one thing I'm often shot down upon is I usually say when talking about this genre of movies that my favourite is Goodfellas. Of the 3 big ones, you usually get Godfather, Goodfellas, and Scarface going in the same conversation, and I usually tend to lean to Goodfellas. I thought that was superb. For my personal taste, Godfather though also was very good from what I do remember of it. But yeah, for whatever reason, I've just never gotten round or never been at the TV at the right time. So I've never actually seen the second one, I'm afraid. I will make the pledge now that I know it's Stevie's favorite movie ever. I'll make the pledge, Stevie, that I will at some point watch it and get back to you. But in fact, I'll probably need to do a double header actually, because as I say, I don't really remember the first one hugely, so I'll need to do myself a wee Godfather double header at some point.
Got to be done. Got to be done.
Got to be done.
But this is where this podcast is good. It kind of, you talk about movies. I've not seen every movie known to man. It's like I've not seen The Deer Hunter. I've got The Deer Hunter sitting on a shelf, but I never go, I'll sit and watch that now. There are films that I've still not got round to watching, and I need to. And, this is where you get inspiration, you hear about films and go, you know what, I'm going to watch that now. But no, definitely, that's a good thing. If you've not seen Godfather 2, I wish I was in that situation and could just watch it. It's like, I wish I'd never seen The Sopranos, so I could just watch it in all one go, be annoyed at the ending. So,
I've never seen The Sopranos either.
You've never seen The Sopranos?
I've seen bits of episodes, but no.
You're in for a treat. Honestly, do you know what?
I think it's the genre. I think it's the genre because when I think about mafia style things, I think that's the thing.
See, like the Godfather 2 and The Sopranos. Yes, it is about like mafia, like crime, whatever, but it's so much more. It's American history. It really is. It's just so much. There's so many layers to it. Because I've kind of had this exact discussion, Doug, with people who've not seen it, and I'm like, yeah, it's not just a mafia thing. You know, it's so much detail, and it's really
But
interesting.
I don't think it's. Mafia doesn't put me off per se. I mean, I really love The Wire, and that's kind of not mafia, but similar kind of themes
Gang related,
in that way. And I watched on Paramount Plus had a show called what was it? King of Tulsa. It's Sylvester
Tulsa
Stallone.
King. Yeah,
yeah, that's it, Tulsa King. It's Sylvester Stallone, and it's a sort of a mafia style setup thing, and I quite enjoyed that. So I don't
surprisingly, it is quite
that,
good. Yeah,
I think it's maybe just not something I gravitate to, and so there's, as I say, a couple of the big hitters that I've missed. Over the years.
Doug, I can tell you've got a good eye for things like cinematography, visuals. The Sopranos isn't just about mafia and gangland stuff. There's, again, film noir. It's shot very film noir style, and it deals with. I know, obviously, we're talking about films here, but this is me trying to make a case for Doug to watch The Sopranos. So it's definitely well intended, but it's about a mob boss that goes to see a psychiatrist, and obviously in that world, that's not something you do. So honestly, if you get a chance, do watch The Sopranos. HBO stuff is just absolutely brilliant. So Doug, honestly, mate, you are missing out, big man. You're missing out. So now, Stevie, what is number? Were we on number 2 there?
Number 2.
Sorry, I can't
you
remember.
actually mentioned it not long ago. Jaws. What a score. John Williams, the music is just phenomenal. To me, it's like perfect cinema. I don't think there's like a single frame of filler. It's all colour, literally. And some of the trivia I love, like the girl in the opening scene, she's getting pulled about in the water. It was like apparently she was just tied up with ropes, and there was guys pulling on each side, and she broke a rib. So her screaming is actually screaming. It's really pretty brutal stuff. I don't know how Spielberg never got the best director. And Robert Shaw, like Quint, the sea captain, he never got a nomination for Best Supporting Actor, which to me is just mind-blowing. Richard Dreyfuss did, which is fair enough because he was great as well, but Robert Shaw's Quint, his speech about the USS Indianapolis, it's one of the best slices of acting ever committed to film. I don't know if you know, but obviously like in the World War II, the American vessel went down, and basically a lot of soldiers or Navy guys were basically in the water for a week, and sharks were just picking them off. And the way he tells it is so chilling. It's brutal, but like it's so well done. Again, apparently the first take he was steaming, and he couldn't get it right, and he came back the next day and begged Spielberg to do it again, and he nailed it. So like really a guy at the absolute top of his form. And I think like the best directors and actors, they make it feel like you're there. Like, it's so immersive. And I don't know about watching it as a kid. I remember like being behind the couch, like actually being behind the couch, like peering there. It was so scary. But it really kind of piqued my interest in like the oceans and like nature documentaries and sharks. I've always kind of been fascinated by them since. But I think as well, like the film it's not just about a big scary shark. It's about human relationships. It's like Brody, like the chief with his wife, his kids, with Hopper or Hooper, and Quint. It's perfect for me. It's a film I could watch, similar to Godfather 2. I could watch it again and again. I will never, like, it can be on at any point in the film, fucking channels, and you see it's like, I'm just going to sit and watch this, and you're settled. It's so well done.
100%. You know what? It's obviously amazing score. John Williams, wasn't it? Iconic score, and that camera scene that just focuses on him, where it kind of zooms right in and distorts the background, where it's just shows his fear that he knows somebody's in the water and there is a shark there. I remember as a kid seeing that, and I think it was the scene where the leg hits the bottom of the water. I'm not sure if it was the first one or the second one, actually. But that freaked me out so much I didn't go for a jobby for a week. And I think as many kids that never went swimming or anywhere near any sort of water, I thought a shark was going to come out the toilet. It absolutely scared the life out of me because it was almost real life horror. It's like, this could actually happen. Obviously, shark attacks don't really happen. They're extremely rare. And it's probably more likely a dolphin will get you or something, or a speedboat. But it created this whole mass hysteria of sharks. And I was always like, oh, God, I'm not going in that water. There could be a shark. It was just, it created real fear and hysteria. Jaws. What a film.
Absolute classic movie. There's one of the ones on my list I think is similar to Jaws in a lot of ways, and there's I would say a lot of similar things about it that I would say about Jaws as well. Superb score, superb use of a non-human character, and Jaws is my brother's favorite film of all time. In fact, he's an absolute massive fan of it. Just having about it, like you say, the scene of the three of them in the boat when they're getting drunk, like you say, telling those stories. It's just such a memorable scene. Obviously, the bit when Quint drags across the board and makes that horrendous noise that I think was burned into my brain for the rest of the time, and starts sort of telling this sort of stories. But one of the real geniuses about this film, which is, again, this is something I'll say about one of mine as well, is how, like, your antagonist, the shark, is on screen for what, 4, 5, 6 minutes at most,
if that,
and almost all of that time is right at the very end, and yet it builds up such a churn of suspense and fear about this character that you basically never see. And it's this total antithesis of we went through a period which I think is thankfully sort of died off now, where cinema was all about putting the baddie on the screen, putting the blood and the horror on the screen, and that can work in a different way, but I just don't think it's as visceral as the way film like Jaws works. And like you say, it totally transformed people's view of sharks. People became afraid of sharks. People became afraid of going into water and on beaches in general after seeing this film, because it was able to have such a grip on that kind of primal emotion. And there's few films that can do that to the level that Jaws does, and did at the time. And just from a cinematic point of view, or a cinema business point of view, Jaws essentially invented blockbuster movies. That and sort of Star Wars really put on the map the idea of having a big summer blockbuster that you release all at once to a wide audience and then make an absolute crap ton of money out of. Jaws was really the genesis of that idea. So again, a huge touchstone for cinema and the business of cinema, as well as sort of the art of cinema.
We all know the real Jaws in Glasgow was Tom Forsyth. We all know that big Jaws. But what you touched on there actually is 100% correct. When you mentioned obviously Jaws, the main baddie of the movie's barely on screen. I was always a big fan growing up of the X-Files, and it was a show that never really had a budget, and you never really saw much of anything. But it lets your brain start thinking about things. And Chris Carter, the creator of the X-Files, did say, you're more scared of what you don't see. And I thought, actually, yeah, you're right. And that was the thing with Jaws. It was a little ripple in the water here. It was a little thing there. Yeah.
It's the
I am a
ultimate
terrible swimmer
less
in
is more.
that film.
It's like less is more.
This is more.
Really
100%. 100%. That was a great choice in there, Stevie. Great choice. What's your next one, big man? Is it number 3 now, is it?
Yeah, 3, Pulp Fiction. Sometimes the director comes along, he changes the way you look at films, and Tarantino was it. I'd seen Goodfellas before, so I knew what like an absolute brilliant, like top tier gangster film was. But Pulp Fiction for me was a step up. It was like Scorsese, but on Lance Armstrong strength, Page, like Performance Enhancing Drugs. It was more violent, it was funnier, it was more entertainment, even better characters and better music, and all of Tarantino stuff. It's his creation. Scorsese's films, a lot of them are loosely based on real events and real people. Pulp Fiction was like a massive earthquake. Kind of changed the landscape of film and culture. Left like a lasting effect, which is still felt today. The dialogue is quoted everywhere. They make things like Marvin getting shot in the face. I mean, that's funny. Like, how can that be funny? It's like, oh man, I shot Marvin in the face. And it's like, you're laughing at it. Like, why am I laughing at this? It's so ridiculous, but like so well done. Like Bruce Willis is Butch, Sam Jackson, tremendous. Even the smaller roles like Harvey Keitel are legendary. And a bit like Quint in Jaws, Christopher Walken's 5-minute speech to like young Butch about his father's watch. To me, that's probably the greatest cameo in any film. It's everything.
The way he tells it as well. It's like,
it's hilarious, it's dark, it's brutal, and it's moving. It's all these things that kind of what Pulp Fiction are. It's kind of like just a wee snapshot of the overall film. It's just, the best films give you like everything, and that to me was like I love loads of Tarantino films, like newer ones, older ones, like Reservoir Dogs, even True Romance, which he never directed. It was Tony Scott. I love that film as well. But Pulp Fiction was just like, what am I watching here? Like, it really kind of blew me away.
I'm going to let Doug in here because I know Doug. I know you like a bit of I can't even say it. Bit of Pulp Fiction, when you Doug. Deal. You
I
can
do.
get late, can you?
I do. Spoiler alert: Pulp Fiction is one of my top 5 as well. So what I might do is there's a film I almost switched out for, so I might talk about that instead, since we'll have already touched on it. But yeah, Pulp Fiction is in my top 5. Absolutely brilliant movie. To me, Quentin Tarantino is to film as James Tavernier is to football. I cannot like the man anymore. There's nothing more he could do to make me a happier film fan. It's to say he's my favorite director of all time by a good distance. I love everything about his movies. The dialogue in particular is just absolutely first class. There's nobody that writes just speech the way he does. This kind of it kind of feels real, but while at the same time being kind of hyper realistic in terms of a way that could only exist in cinema. And yet I can totally believe that these guys would sit and have the chance that they're having. And the kind of
thing, isn't it?
Banal stuff that ends up becoming important. Like you say, that whole story from Christopher Walken is amazing. It's a perfect example of what you could do with little money. That film was made for $8 million, and that was its increased budget after they got Bruce Willis. The budget was much lower, and then once Bruce Willis agreed to come on, because he was the biggest star at the time, and so once they got him, they upped it to $8 million. So I'd hate to think what would have happened if they had even less, but it's just so well made. The stories are excellent. The characters, even the small characters, like there's the Vincent's drug dealer. He's a really funny guy, and his girlfriend as well, and they've got the whole scene together. It's just superbly told and superbly acted. It brought John Travolta back in the minds of a lot of people, I think, as well, and just a real fun movie. Like you say, the whole bit with, oh god damn, I shot Marvin in the face. It's just such a good line. The whole scene with when they go in at the beginning with Samuel L. Jackson, when he delivers the whole quote, that for a long time I thought was a real Bible verse until I sadly was told otherwise. But again, Samuel L. Jackson, that was the first film I ever saw Samuel L. Jackson in as well. And immediately I was like,
what film was Steven there first? Yeah, brilliant.
I was going to say, I was just like, who the hell is this guy, and how can I watch every other thing he is in? And as it turned out, that was easy to do because he's in every other film in existence. So, but yeah, an absolute superb film, and one of many superb films by a superb director.
Do you know what?
I'll stop there.
Do you know what? There's always, I've always said that there always seems to be the best directors out there always tend to be absolutely mad bastards, don't they? I have to say it, they absolutely do. When you hear Tarantino speak, sometimes you're like, my goodness, you can tell the guy's like the creative genius, can't you? The whole story, obviously you look at the mundane conversations in the car. It's very Kevin Smith style kind of dialogue, isn't it? Where you get these random conversations that you didn't think anybody would write into a movie, but we all now know what a Big Mac is called in France. We all know, but these all become relevant. They become iconic as well, and that's credit to the storytelling. And I just think that Tarantino, sometimes you have to rewatch a film, especially when you see it for the first time, especially with a Tarantino movie. But you go, you know what? He's told that absolutely brilliantly. He's told it differently, but brilliantly. And that is a fantastic choice. And do you know what? I bought that on 4K just before Christmas. So I need to give it a rewatch because it's been a good couple of years since I've last seen it. But no, absolutely fantastic choice, Pulp Fiction there. So what is your next one? You're on number 4. Number 4 now.
So a wee bit of a cheat here, but Lord of the Rings, the whole thing was filmed, like a trilogy was filmed at the same time over 2 years. The extended versions, like almost 12 hours, I think over 12 hours actually. I can't quite put into words how good Peter Jackson did with that job. I think he cast it perfectly well, like the detail, everything about it. I'd read the books when I was younger as well, so obviously I was really kind of looking forward to it. I think it's the best trilogy ever made. No, the special effects, the detail, and all the
The
characters.
best trilogy ever made. Strong words, says Stevie. Strong
I mean, you
words.
mentioned the Godfather element, but I didn't want to go back to you on 3. But as far as I'm concerned, there is no Godfather 3. I can't have it. But I don't know if you're big fantasy fans or whatever. But I mean, I'm not a huge fantasy fan. Like Game of Thrones, I can take or leave. But Lord of the Rings, so well done. I say the only thing, I don't know how you feel about it, but like Frodo at the end of the first film trying to head off without Sam, that has got to be the single biggest ever overestimation of a person's own abilities in film. I was like, behave yourself, wee man. You wouldn't get across that river without Samwise. There's just such a good story. It's Tolkien, some of the stuff you read about him, he's just such a talented writer. And I feel like Peter Jackson really, first film kind of sets the scene for a lot of people didn't like the first film as much. Like 2 and 3 really take off, like with the action, especially with the Rohirrim and then Gondor kind of getting involved later on. But yeah, it's just I don't know. I think the time Tolkien wrote it, it kind of reflected the time everything that was going on in Europe and stuff. And yeah, I just absolutely adore those films. That's great as well. I got to watch with my daughter. Like I watch a lot of films with my daughter. She's like 10 now. So films that I loved as a kid, like even stuff like Big Trouble in Little China, like 80s classics. Like, well, you forget the language and something like, oh, I forgot there's a lot of swearing in this, but they're so good. And Lord of the Rings, watching them with her, we've done it in 3 consecutive Saturdays. Let her stay up late, and it was just watching her reaction to stuff. It's an awesome feeling seeing them.
See, my daughter's just about to turn 8, so we've started with some of the films, like Back to the Future, where you get away and you forget how much swearing's in some of the films. You're like, oh Jesus! But around the time, I think it was 2001, Lord of the Rings, the first one came out. I was a little bit of an uneducated delinquent, so to speak, and I wasn't into fantasy at all. I got a copy of it from the Barras. I watched it, and I was like, what is this all about? I'm not into it. I watched the second one, like Talking Trees, no, but I saw the Hobbit films, enjoyed those, went back and watched Lord of the Rings, and I did enjoy them. You can see, like, Peter Jackson's just a very visual director, somebody that's very, very good at storytelling. And if he's putting a name to a project, it is going to have the time, care, and effort into it.
I don't know if you remember The Frighteners. Do you remember that? He did that like late 90s.
The horror film.
Yeah. And he basically had the ring race in that film. He basically tested it in that, and it's quite cool how he that was almost like a tester for Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Even King Kong, I thought King Kong was a brilliant film. I really enjoyed that as well. So
you know what? That didn't get the love it deserved. It was very hyped at the time, and then really dropped off when it came out on video and DVD. But I like King Kong. I saw that at the cinema. I thought it was fantastic. It's a hard story to tell and give it the retelling it deserves as well. And I think Jackson did it very respectfully as well of the kind of time, the era. And of course, it's keeping in theme with that original kind of story and not kind of changing it too much into something that it's not. Doug, Lord of the Rings, are you on Team Frodo or Bilbo?
I'm not a particularly huge what's the terminology you said there? Is it like fantasy fan, which is a bit odd to say because like I played Dungeons and Dragons, which is basically can be basically just Lord of the Rings the game in a lot of ways. But I have to say I've definitely not seen the third one. I think I've seen the second one, but I've definitely seen the first one. I did enjoy it. Again, I've not run out to see the others, but the thing that I like about it most, the thing that I really appreciate about it again, is the world building, the characterization, in terms of the design of the characters, their outfits, the masks, the sheer level of detail and quality that the effects team and particularly the art team have found to that film is arguably second to none. The level is so high. it's really impressive to see the all of the practical stuff that's in that movie and the ones that followed. So that's the thing that I appreciate the most. As I say, I can definitely watch that with that eye and appreciate that. I did enjoy it. Wait, now that I think about it, I think I must have seen the third one because I remember did it not have about 12 endings? And I do seem to remember sitting there going, "Is that not it ended? Oh no, there's another scene. Oh wait, there's another bit. So no, I must have seen it. I must have seen them all actually." But yeah, so perfectly good films. Not my favourite ones, but perfectly good films. But as I say, the thing that I appreciate the most is the artistry of the actual design and stuff. That stuff is absolutely phenomenal. The main thing that you got me thinking about is when you said greatest trilogy ever, and I was just like, oh, what would I? Because my brain immediately went, well, it wouldn't be for me, so what would mine be? So I started thinking, you've got Indiana Jones, Star Wars, maybe, the Evil Dead trilogy, maybe might sneak in there.
Toy Story. Toy Story's pretty strong for the first few movies.
Toy Story, very good one.
Do you know what?
I think I'd give it to Back to the Future. The third one's maybe not the strongest film. The first two are absolutely immaculate, though. So I might give that as my favorite trilogy. But yeah, Lord of the Rings, perfectly good films. Not necessarily my favorites, but good films, but absolutely superb, as I say, from the art department and the effects guys, for all the practical effects in that movie is absolutely top notch.
It is amazing how they managed, especially with the extended editions, like Stevie was saying, how they managed to get kind of, 12 hours of footage of, if you ever seen Clerks 2, how Jay, Silent Bob, I think it's Jay's talking to somebody else, he's talking about Lord of the Rings is just take the right, walk over here, drop it in there. You can spread that out over 12 hours with the kind of universe and stuff. But again, Peter Jackson has created this amazing universe, the great set in New Zealand, of course, and even just characters like Ian Holmes' character. Absolutely, just everybody, the casting worked. Again, like Doug says, I'm not big into my kind of fantasy stuff, but it did keep you gripped, it kept you entertained, and it did keep you watching. And yeah, no, it's definitely a trilogy
influential as well.
Like, no, definitely.
Every fantasy film that came after, until now, you can see Lord of the Rings in it somewhere. Absolutely massive in terms of
and I
influence.
think as well, for the film we've had so far, it's probably the most modern on anybody's list so far. They're actually films that have gone into this century. Cause I don't think we've had any films from this century yet mentioned. I might be wrong, you never know. But so, Stevie, what's your other one?
Well, that segues right into my number 5. This is a very recent film. I did struggle with this. I was kind of wanting to go for The Revenant, which I loved, but I kind of wanted something with humour, like real humour. So my number 5 is Poor Things. Watched it last year, and I think this is like a Marmite film. It splits opinion, but first 20 minutes I was sitting there watching it, I was thinking, what am I watching here? But I was like, I have to keep going. I knew it was going to be amazing. Anything I feel like just kind of challenges your normal way of thinking or like your norms, I think it's a good thing. Similar to District 9. I remember being at the cinema watching District 9 and people actually got up and left. Like they just left after 20 minutes, and like afterwards, that was amazing. And I spoke to one of the ushers. I was like,
"That deserved a sequel. That deserved a sequel. There was definitely a lot that needed to be after that." Yeah, 100%.
I remember like speaking to the usher on the way. I was like, "Did those people who left early say anything?" And they're like, "Yeah, they were expecting Independence Day. What the hell was that?" And I just burst out laughing. I was like, "That kind of sums it up perfectly. You're expecting Independence Day, then go watch a Will Smith movie." You know what I mean? I like Will Smith. The District 9 was so original, and I feel like Poor Things had a similar feel. Truly original films, only meant for everybody. Like a lot of people think this is brilliant. Sorry.
So I was just going to say, I always remember from District 9, because when I was watching at Blockbuster, we had the trailer on the telly every 2 seconds, and it was just every 2 minutes you'd hear bloody prawns.
Oh, shoot the prawn, mate. Oh, it was an amazing film.
Oh, like, great film.
What I was going to make, like a lot of people like really mass popular like TV shows like Mrs. Brown's Boys. People think that's a good show. I think it's a load of crap. You know what I mean? But like, good luck to them. They've got terrible taste. But like, I don't know.
I enjoyed a few episodes, but then it became the same, and then you were like, "Oh, no, can't be doing that."
Came off a long time ago, but
Scotland's greatest exports because it is a BBC Scotland production as well.
Is that right? Shameful. But like, Poor Things to me is like the darkest comedy I think I've ever seen. Emma Stone is like phenomenal in the lead.
Yeah, because then she directed it as well, or produced it, one or the other, didn't she?
Is that right? There's a meme where it's like she hears a baby crying and she remarks, "I must go punch that baby." You know what I mean? It's so like off the wall funny. And Willem Dafoe, Mark Ruffalo, I think they're probably like career best performances. They're so funny. Dafoe reminds me like an American Gary Oldman, and he plays a Scottish doctor in this, and it's just a remarkable film. And like mentioned cinematography before, there's a scene or a chapter where they're on the boat, and again it feels like you're there. It's so beautifully like shot, but it's also got like a kind of like a mist of darkness, but it's like got that kind of impending doom. You're just waiting for everything to come crashing down, but it keeps it funny, it keeps it dramatic, it's exciting right up to the very end, and it's quite sweet as well. Like I say, it's just a really original film, probably one of the best films I've seen in recent years. So I really enjoyed it.
I had a mate just before Christmas say, "You've got to watch this," and I'm like, "Oh, I'll get around to it at some point." I have a list of films to watch, and I thought I do like Emma Stone. I do remember reading the back of it in HMV when it got released, and I thought, "Oh, that's a bit of an interesting story," but not gone to it yet. Definitely one on my list, and I do like Emma Stone. Obviously, comedy roots and stuff, and she's getting into like a lot more serious stuff now. She's definitely one of the biggest stars in Hollywood now, you would argue. Doug, have you seen it? Have you seen it?
No, I could basically just repeat everything you just said, and that would be my opinion as well. Love William Dafoe. Mark Ruffalo's good as well. I've been a fan of Emma Stone for a while. Like you say, she's got some really good comedy stuff in her early. I was going to say discography there, but filmography. And there, so it's definitely something that I'd be up for watching. I have heard good things about it. And I think is it Netflix? It's on. I'm sure it's on one of the streaming
Disney.
services.
I think it's Disney.
Or is it Disney?
I think it's.
I'm sure I've seen it on something, so I'll definitely be able to watch. I'll definitely watch it at some point because I'm sure I've seen it on one of the various services. So yeah, so I say I can't comment, but I have heard good things, and cast certainly looks good. So another one to put on the list.
Nicely done, nicely done. That is a great 5. Obviously very difficult to choose, so thank you for sharing, Stevie. Absolutely brilliant. Mate. So Doug, now big man, it's on to you. What is your top 5 starting at number 5? Oh, here we go.
Well, as I say, being the geek I am, I've come prepared with slides. So number 5, it's a Japanese movie called Battle Royale. As I said earlier, arguably number 5 was my hardest choice because there's so many things I considered for this spot. Back to the Future was going to be in at one point. Trainspotting was going to be in at one point. A film called Hard Candy that's got Elliot Page.
Oh, that is brilliant.
Was in it at one point. So I went back and forth by a lot of things. And I kind of picked this partly because I thought it would be a bit more unique. I thought it would maybe be one that people haven't seen. And so I thought I would take the opportunity to air it out. Battle Royale is released in 2000, directed by Kinji Fukasaku. You're probably not going to know many of the actors, all Japanese actors in it, other than perhaps Beat Takeshi, who is quite famous and has done various kind of things over here as well. So some people might know him. Some folk might know one of the actresses who did go on to be in, let me just get her name here, Chiaki Kuriyama, plays one of the kids in it, and she went on to be cast in Kill Bill as Gogo Yubari, who was one of the henchmen for Lucy Liu's character. So some people might have seen her there. But Battle Royale, the easiest way in modern day terms to tell people about Battle Royale is that it's basically the Hunger Games, but better in every single conceivable way. It came before Hunger Games. The person that wrote that swears blindly she'd never heard of Battle Royale, but the similarities are incredible if you put them side by side. But for me, but Battle Royale does everything that the Hunger Games does, as I say, but better. The Hunger Games takes about 20 minutes to get into its core point and for the film to really get going. And Battle Royale does in the first 5 minutes what it takes, as I say, Hunger Games 20 minutes to do. And that kind of economy of film really sets it apart. It's hyper violent. If you're not into violence, then it would be one to miss because it is very violent. I personally adore that. I think it really gives the film the part of the edge that pushes it forward. And just as the wee light pre-say says there, so it's set in a dystopian Japan, and the idea is that every year a high school class is selected and then placed on an island where they're made to then battle to the death until there's only one person left. And it's the story of this particular class, and obviously the classes between friendships and cliques, and how they come closer or instantly dissolve when put into this situation. So it's a really visceral story that's just told in a really tight way from start to finish, kind of like what Stevie was saying about Jaws. There's no sort of wasted time in this film. It gets straight into what it needs to, tells you what you need to know, and then you're into you're into the battle. The characters are really interesting. The Beat Takeshi plays the teacher of the class, who also is sort of in charge of the battle royale, and has a slight unique relationship with one of the students, who reminds him of his daughter, who passed away. And yeah, as I say, it's just for me an excellent movie. It is in Japanese, so if you want to watch it, you're either sub or dub, depending on your preference. I would suggest watching it in its original format. I always prefer that, just to get the emotions and things from the original actors, whom I all think do excellent. None of the characters in this film, or none of the actors, I should say, who are all. It's not like a lot of films, obviously, when you've got young people, they're kind of played by older people. Almost all of this cast are the age that they are meant to be, and none of them have any stunt doubles in this film. They are all doing everything themselves, and so you're really able to get in close to them in some of the scenes as well, which makes it quite claustrophobic, and heightens attention even further. So it's an excellent movie, one I think people maybe not have seen, so I wanted to kind of showcase.
Do you know what? I remember I did watch it at Blockbuster, because we had, again, it was one of these films, one copy of, this looks interesting. And I've got an absolute respect for Asian cinema. I think, like, obviously, Old Boy, absolutely amazing movie, dark as anything. And as well, I'm not really ever too scared by horror, but when I watched my first, I can't remember where it's from. I don't think it's Korea, but The Eye. It might be Chinese, actually. The Eye, but oh my goodness, it absolutely scared the life out of me. Just that kind of Asian cinema has a very good way of storytelling, and Battle Royale was fantastic. I remember they were going to do an American remake, but again, Hunger Games, I think, was already out, and I think that there was already a film of the same kind of thing, so I think it did get dropped. I always remember there was going to be one, and then it just disappeared out of nowhere. But no,
that's the exact reason why. That's the exact reason why they decided there's no point in doing it, because people will just think people would end up thinking, ironically, that it's a rip-off of the Hunger Games, despite having come first. So they just decided there wasn't any point in doing a remake, because they'd essentially be making just a more violent Hunger Games, really. And to be honest, I think that's a good thing, because sometimes these Western remakes are not always the best. Just watch the original, people. It's almost always the way to go.
Definitely. Stevie, you seen Battle Royale?
I have. I've seen it at uni a long time ago, and I totally echo what Doug said, that it's another cult classic. Again, with the Asian cinema, I don't watch a lot of them, but whenever I do see one, it always really impresses. I saw Godzilla -1 at the cinema last Christmas, and just amazing, like, just so well crafted from start to finish, and pulls you right in straight away. So yeah, great choice, Doug.
You've started strong, Doug. You've started strong in at number 5. What is in at number 4 for you, big man?
Well, number 4 is my doubler, to put it in sticker parlance. So it was Pulp Fiction. Was my number 4. As I say, we'll not go. Obviously, we've talked about that already. We'll not go over it again. I could very easily have switched this out with Kill Bill. I was always going to have a Tarantino film in my top 5, as I say. He is my favorite director. I love every one of his films. Inglourious Basterds could have been in there for its opening scene on its own. I could take that as a short movie and put it in my top 5. It's just so good. So I'll talk a little bit about Kill Bill instead, just as I say, seeing as we've already covered Pulp Fiction. As I say, Kill Bill, such a good story. I think the Uma Thurman is absolutely amazing in that, as she is in Pulp Fiction. But obviously given a larger role. She, funnily enough, didn't want to be in Pulp Fiction to begin with. Quentin had to phone her up and actually read the script to her through the phone to get her on board. And once she got on board, she was afraid that she wouldn't be able to stand up to John Travolta in the dancing scene, because obviously Travolta was known for his moves, having been in Greece and what's the other one? The disco one.
Saturday Night Fever.
Saturday Night Fever. That's the one. It's totally escaped me there. So John Travolta had to tell her just to shut up and dance, I think was what the quote was. But and Kill Bill, she's absolutely superb as the sort of the heroine, and the fight scenes in the movie are so energetic and so frenetic and well thought out. There's the sort of different settings that they have. They each have such a unique flair to them, and the way that she has to come up with the different ways to dispatch them. So the soundtrack, we talked about soundtracks. All Tarantino films, I think, have got excellent soundtracks. Kill Bill's
very varied, aren't they, as well?
Yeah. And Kill Bill is no exception to that. So
you mentioned like the universe and that, because obviously the guy that trains Uma Thurman, like he's like the martial arts star who Clarence goes to watch in True Romance on his birthday. Same actor.
Yeah.
It's like 30 years later.
Same
It's amazing. Even like Inglourious Bastards, you've got Donnie Donowitz. He's a guy obviously like bashes the Nazis' heads in his baseball bats. He's the father of Lee Donowitz, the film director in True Romance. It's just like it's so like well linked. It's just amazing.
Vincent Vega in Pulp Fiction is the brother of Vic Vega and Mr. Blonde.
Dogs.
Loads of little things like that as well. Another great part of the sort of the Tarantino universe. But as I say, we've talked about Pulp Fiction, so as I say, I could easily swap that in with Kill Bill, though, if I wanted or needed to, because as I say, Tarantino for me is an absolute top guy. But anything you want to add before I move on?
Do you know what? Absolutely brilliant choices. Do love a bit of Tarantino, especially late 90s, early 2000s Tarantino. And obviously looking there, Pulp Fiction, I always forget Tim Roth's in it. Tim Roth is an absolutely fantastic actor. And it's somebody that, you know, it just always, it's like somewhere out there with Gary Oldman, just that kind of very similar type of act. Absolutely brilliant. The casting in a Tarantino movie is always spot on. And you look at it sometimes, like obviously you spoke about Travolta. You wouldn't expect Travolta to be in this type of film. And of course, at that point, he was not washed up per se, but he wasn't really getting the acting gig that, you know, he had in the past. Work was definitely a bit drying up for him in the 90s, but this kind of really put him back on the map. So, yeah, absolutely great film. And you're right in some respects, Kill Bill and Pulp Fiction, they are of the same ilk. They are very well-told stories, very visual, and yeah, the whole universe is great. And of course, like Stevie said, the whole universe is kind of interlinked in its own way. Everything exists in the universe. So, yeah, there'll be a briefcase in there somewhere with a light bulb in it.
Definitely. Okay, so number three, we get to go back to the point of great sequels, as my third film is Aliens. As I say, massive fan of Alien as well, and I'm perfectly happy for anyone who thinks that if I'm going to put an Alien movie in, it should be the first one. You could easily do that. For me, they are on a par, but they are different types of movie. You know, one is a slasher, this is an action movie, and I think it just comes down to which you prefer in a lot of ways. But for me, as I say, Aliens just pips it. It is, in my opinion, probably the greatest sequel of all time. It just takes everything about what was an absolute stonking movie and just nudges it into up to 11 in all of the right ways to do it as well. When you're coming to make a sequel, it's all about how can we add to the lore? How can we make things that little bit bigger? How can we explore more the depths of the characters? And I think Alien does all that. In particular, I think I encourage people to watch the director's cut, specifically for the scene where, and spoiler alert, if anyone doesn't want to know any spoilers, but there's a scene cut out of the theatrical cut where Ellen Ripley, she's just woken up from having been in hypersleep for a long time. And one of the other characters is telling her about her daughter, which she left in Alien 1 when she was 11, who's grown up and had her own family and then passed away. And there's this really cutting line that Weaver gives where she talks about, I told her I'd be back for her birthday, for her 11th birthday. And it's just this really painful line. You can see it in her face. And it just goes on. For me, I can't believe they cut it, because to me, it just so informs the journey that she then goes on with Newt in the film. And it does stand by itself. So I suppose that it's fine that it's not there. But I just think that one line, to me, elevates the whole rest of the film as well. So I recommend people watch the director's cut to get that section as a part of that arc, because you really dive further into this character that you've seen in the first movie. Just being a normal person. One of the great things about that first movie is it does just strike you as it's just a bunch of normal people. They're just kind of truckers, basically, who get put in this horrendous situation. And so you really delve further into Ellen Ripley as a character. And I think this is the film that really elevates her into the cinematic icon of a character that she is. If you ask anyone to name a big female heroine from movies, I guarantee probably 60, 70, maybe even 80% of people would say Ellen Ripley, because she's such an iconic character. And for me, this film really pushed her into that stratosphere. The action is great. It adds to the aliens sort of life cycle and lore as well, with the kind of the alien queen. And you touched on Lance Henriksen. Lance Henriksen was actually going to give up movies prior to this because he'd been a bit of a journeyman actor, and he decided if this film didn't make it, then he'd had enough. Well, it made it. He ended up playing one of the most iconic androids of all time in Bishop. So he did all right there. He gets a bit more screen time in this one as well than he does in Terminator. You've got Michael Biehn, who's excellent, and the camaraderie between the Marines as they go into this situation. They're so cocky and sure of themselves. They know what's what and what's up, and this is just going to be another day in the office. And then you watch how their characters just completely change as they're suddenly met up with this foe that utterly obliterates them in like seconds upon meeting them. The arguably standout in Bill Paxton. He plays Hudson, one of my favorite characters in any film. And almost everything he says is a quotable line. Game over, game over. They're coming out of the walls. Everything he says is pretty much a quotable line. And as I say, watching him go from he's the real cocksure, cock of the walk kind of guy, and then watch him just utterly dissolve into like this sniveling, fear-filled person, and then have to kind of find his way back to his heroism. It's just everything about this film I love. The art, the direction, the miniatures, the effects, everything about it. When they first showed the first cut of this film to the Fox executives, they were angry because they thought they'd blown the budget on sets, but they'd actually just been fooled by the miniatures. And the sort of forced perspective work, and there's a great story from I can't remember who it was. I think it's one of the art team who said she took great delight in revealing to these guys who were all raging about how they'd blown money on these massive sets that there were no massive sets. It was paintings, miniatures, forced perspective, etc., etc. All of it stands up today, and as I say, it's well, quite obviously, as I've put it at number 3, one of the, in my opinion, best films of all time.
Do you know what? It's definitely up there. It's very different story. Obviously, the first film is Jaws in space. This one is more action film, as you say, and of course, a bigger budget behind it. That director's cut you were talking about, I'm sure I remember seeing a documentary when they actually first showed this on TV in America for the big premiere a few years after it had been in the cinema. They actually showed that director's cut and didn't tell anybody, and people were then going, but this is almost like a little bit of a different side story going on, obviously, with the kids and everything, which is quite an interesting thing. It was like they were testing the kind of waters with the audience with that, in a sense. It's just a fantastic film. It's just a great action film. It's a very strong female lead as well, which you were starting to see some really good, strong female leads in movies. And I think if there were aliens around, I'd want Sigourney Weaver. I would want Ripley to help me out there. But Stevie, Aliens, it's just a great film, isn't it?
It's tremendous. I could argue it's James Cameron's best. I agree with pretty much everything Doug's just said. Great lead, great support cast. It's just so atmospheric. And Lance Henriksen, I think this was probably the first film I've seen him in. And then I saw Near Dark, which is probably the best vampire film I've ever seen. He's tremendous in that. He's just such a top actor. And to have him and Bill Paxton in support, it says a lot for the film. I'm sure I saw Aliens almost at the exact same time that I saw Predator. And those two films are like seared into my mind. I used to watch films when I was like 8, 9 year old that I had no business watching. I don't know how I got away with it, but yeah.
Oh, we all did. Don't worry. It made us who we are.
Late night TV. Oh,
100%. And
yes,
there was always. I remember seeing Predator late at night. My mum was round some friend's house, and we were there quite late on a Friday night, and it was on the telly, and I was glued to it. I was so scared. I was like, "Oh, you're in the jungle. You can't see it. There's something watching them." Oh, just absolutely brilliant. But yeah, Aliens is just an absolutely fantastic movie, and
you got the jeopardy of having Newt, because it's scary enough, but having the wee kid there, just like, Jesus. How are they going to survive this? They've got to survive it, and it drags you along with it. It's tremendous, like really great pacing as well. I sometimes think films set in space, they can be a bit almost ponderous, whereas the pacing of that is just perfect.
Oh, absolutely brilliant. Yeah, no, Aliens up there, definitely. And of course, my best pal, Lance Henriksen's in it. I had a beer with him once, so of course he's my best friend for life. But quite an intense guy, actually. He was having a cigarette and he was talking to me about the American black budget and stuff. I think he was a little bit, not quite a conspiracy theorist, but of course, he was some very strong opinions. And he was into sport, actually. I was speaking to him about football. I was trying to talk to him about Rangers, but it wasn't happening. But he likes rugby, and the New Zealand All Blacks was his team, which is a bit of a strange one. But there we go. Absolutely lovely guy, though. Really nice guy. And yeah, I've got a few pictures with him as well. Nice guy. But I just thought I'd name drop that in there again, I just of course. So that's your number 3. So we're getting to the business end now. Doug, what is your number 2? I'm desperate to see this now.
So
number 2.
So number 2 is my 2 and my 1 are what I think is the greatest film of all time, and then my favorite film of all time at number 1. So this is number 2, what I think, in my opinion, is the greatest film ever made, for numerous reasons. And it's the one that I touched on earlier, where I said all the things I would say about Jaws, I would say about this movie. And that movie is Jurassic Park. For me, Jurassic Park has absolutely zero flaws as a movie. It is tightly written. The actors are superb, from the top of the line actors to everyone who's playing the smaller parts. Everyone is absolutely perfect in the role that they've been cast. Just talking about the pacing of the movie is perfect. The wonderment. I remember this is one of the sort of older films I did actually see as a child. And the sort of the wonder of the film was just absolutely, oh my God, what is this I'm seeing? And the score to underline and push that wonder is just absolutely immaculate. This is one of the most beautiful sounding scores in a film. The music is absolutely superb and really just elevates all the scenes. You've got the effects, which I think 100% hold up in every way. Today, the animatronics are superb. You could maybe point at 1 or 2 tiny scenes where they did use a little bit more computer graphics, but certainly the animatronic stuff. I still see that scene when they look at the sick Triceratops, and I'm perfectly content that exists and is a real dinosaur that they somehow managed to make for that movie. It's just absolutely superb. So the adventure is great. It's got the exact same thing where your antagonist, the dinosaur, the thing that everyone went to see, are on screen for about 9 minutes. And it's all about the build up and the comedy that's fit in there amongst the building anxiety of something's going to go wrong here, and it's going to go really wrong. But I'm dead excited to see it. I'm kind of scared what's going to happen to these kids and these people. There's some great underlying stuff in it as well, like the character Sam Neill, this character that Sam Neill plays, sorry, Dr. Grant. Obviously, sort of famously doesn't like children. Laura Dern's character's trying to convince him and bring him around to the idea of kids, and you get that great scene where there's the kid at the beginning who's like, "Oh, that just looks like a giant turkey," and he brings out the raptor claw and tells the kid exactly how it would cut his stomach open and start eating him while he's still alive. And then you cut to later in the movie when he's in the tree with the kids and they're kind of nestled in with him. He's kind of changed from this guy who was trying to avoid the children earlier to having become their protector due to the situation. And they've kind of grown on him. He's telling jokes and he's teaching them about the dinosaurs. And he sort of leans back, and then you see him kind of go, oh, as if, when you lean back on something that you didn't expect to be there, and he pulls out the raptor claw that he's used earlier, and then he throws it away. And it's this sort of symbolic, I don't need this thing that scares children anymore. And little things, touches like that again give it that subtext. I just think, as I say, for me, it's just an absolutely perfect movie. Jeff Goldblum is peak Jeff Goldblum in this movie. He's got so many good one-liners. He's this sort of sleazy, kind of cheesy guy coming on to Laura Dern. That ludicrous one shot where he's just like laid out with his shirt, kind of with the abs out, that became iconic. It's just like peak Goldblum.
That's one for the mums.
Exactly. There's something for everybody. The kids have got the dinosaurs. The mums have got Jeff Goldblum. It's just, I just absolutely love this film. It could easily have been my number one. And then in many ways is. I probably actually won't talk about my number one as passionately, but I just think this is the absolute perfect movie from start to finish. And if any of our younger audience perhaps hasn't seen this film, go and see it. Don't bother with anything that came after. 2 and 3 are okay, actually. But this stands alone as just the peak of cinema, in my opinion. Absolutely perfect. Jurassic Park.
Do you know what it is when you see that as a kid? Absolutely amazing. Obviously, the scenes towards the end with the raptors, the jelly wobbling, the water, just the ripples in the water, such iconic moments. And I think, if I remember right, the T-Rex roar was the sound of a koala. Unbelievably, that managed to record. So yeah, you're just thinking, Jesus, if you were in the outback and you hear a koala making that sound, you'd be running for the hills, wouldn't you? But yeah, perfectly cast. Obviously, was it Richard Attenborough, wasn't it? Just absolutely brilliant. And this probably has saved lives, this movie. This has stopped people messing with genetics and the past, I think, because there's a lot of warnings to take from this. We do not need the dinosaurs with us now. Yeah, definitely not. But absolutely phenomenal film. One of Spielberg's best. And that's the thing. Spielberg had gone through a few eras at this point in cinema and was still producing absolutely brilliant movies. Obviously Close Encounters, and then obviously this stuff in the 80s as well. Absolutely brilliant. Stevie, Jurassic Park, is that the type of film that you like?
Loved it. Saw it in the cinema as a kid with my dad, and I can still remember it literally jumping out my seat when the raptor was in the kitchen bit at the end chasing them. Like, what a fright. It was just like wonderment. And a name we've not mentioned, Sam Jackson, he's in that as well. I mean, the guy's literally in everything. Really good in it. But yeah, it's just such a...
That was the big guy, wasn't it? Was that the big guy?
He was the tech guy for the whole place, wasn't he? He was like...
Yes.
He's the one that goes, hold on to your butts.
Yeah. Switches everything off. Unplugs it and then gets him back online. But yeah, it's a tremendous, great thought. It stood the test of time, like Doug said. You can watch it then and enjoy it as much as I did then. I thought the second one was pretty boring, but I actually thought the third film was a pretty snappy sequel. Like 90 minutes, just boom, like do what I did best, like scare you. But obviously one's that kind of broke the mold. It was like really for its time. It was like there's never really been a film with this kind of tech before, and done really well. Tremendous.
So I always remember do you remember in the 90s, you get that kind of 3D magazine of dinosaurs and you get the wee crappy 3D glasses with it, and they do one like every couple of weeks. and then dinosaurs would come to life. There was a lot of stuff that kind of came out, obviously off the back of Jurassic Park, and obviously it was Dinosaur Mania off the back of that as well. It's again another iconic movie, a movie that did something for society. I say done something for society, obviously influenced things in society and pop culture as well. So no, an absolute stonking choice. So Doug, we're coming to the pinnacle now. We are coming to the top film. So what is it? Reveal it.
So my as I say, this is certainly not the best film of all time. Some would argue maybe the worst film in the list. Although I was actually surprised.
It's a shot of glory, then, is it?
Yeah. I prepared myself to, when I was looking at putting the Rotten Tomato scores on my wee slides. I had expected that this was going to be a much lower score, and I was all prepped to sort of introduce it by saying, and ironically, my number one film is the only one that doesn't have 90%, but it actually does have over 90%. Well, that's pleasantly surprised me. But my favorite film of all time is High Fidelity, starring John Cusack.
Yes, the Nick Love novel, wasn't
it? Nick Hornby, yeah. Nick Hornby.
Nick Hornby, sorry. Yeah.
One of the many Nick Hornby books that has become a film. He's got things like About a Boy was a Nick Hornby book that became a film. Fever Pitch. I can't remember what the title was. There's one about that sort of kind of explores depression and things that became a movie as well. But this was one I saw the film before I read the book. It got me to read the book, and then I ended up becoming a Nick Hornby fan after that, and read most of his novels that came after. But out in 2000, directed by Stephen Frears, a handful of writers, including John Cusack himself, who helped to sort of convert it over. As in America, obviously, the Nick Hornby book is set in the UK, set in London, and a lot of the music, a lot of the music choices and things like that are really there to fit the time and the place. So they sort of took the time to transpose all that stuff to what the American equivalents would be. So sort of change the music to fit the music scene in I've forgotten off the top of my head, Chicago, I think it is, that it's based. And so they took the care to do that so that it would all work in the right way. I'm a big John Cusack fan in general. Another favourite film that almost made my number 5 was Grosse Pointe Blank, which he's in, that I really enjoy as well. But this also has Jack Black in his first, or not his first role, one of his early roles, but certainly his breakout role for Jack Black. He's an absolute force of nature in this film. Lisa Bonet, who was married to, or definitely going out with, if not married to, Lenny Kravitz, and their daughter goes on to play Rob Gordon in the Hulu TV series of High Fidelity, which if anyone hasn't seen, I would recommend as well.
I didn't know that exists.
It's actually very, very good. I went in very trepidatious with it being my favorite film and all, but they do make a bunch of changes kind of for the modern day, but all good changes in my opinion. It's a really good series. Unfortunately, never got a season 2, but definitely one to watch if you haven't seen that either. But the basic premise of the movie, for those who don't know, it's about this character Rob. Rob is a record store owner. He's a bit of a dick. He's a total music snob. Him, Jack Black, and Todd Loso, who plays the other person that works in the record store, they all look down at basically everyone in terms of music tastes. And it follows Rob as he breaks up with his girlfriend at the beginning of the movie. And so he sort of looks back at, ironically enough, his top 5 breakups of all time to try and figure out why he keeps getting dumped, why he keeps losing out in love. And spoiler alert, the real answer turns out is because he's a bit of a dick. But he's gone through life obviously thinking that it's been the fault of everyone else, when actually it turns out it's been his fault all along. But the kind of thing that I like about this movie that I think makes it more realistic is that at the end of the movie, at the end of movies like this, usually your character has kind of gone through they learn their lesson and they come out the end of the film a better person and sort of win back their love interest and everything. But Rob kind of learns nothing in this movie. He's just as much of a dick pretty much at the end as he is at the beginning. And without giving away everything, the reason his girlfriend comes back to him, it's actually got nothing to do with anything he's learned or hasn't learned. It's because of another event that sort of makes her want to get the familiarness of the fact that they've been together for so long. And that's why they end up getting back together. So it's, to me, it feels a bit more real, in that sometimes people go through stuff and don't really change, and their life doesn't really change. You just you learn maybe a couple of little things, but kind of carry on as is. And I kind of really like that about it. But it's hard to pinpoint. I made my dad watch it once, and he didn't like it. He said nothing happens, and I was like, well, that's kind of true. But I think it's just the characters, and I'm a big music guy. I've played in bands and things for most of my life, so obviously the music angle was a big seller for me as well. But I just think it's really well crafted. The actors are all superb in their roles. Joan Cusack, who obviously John's sister.
Yeah, that's right.
Appears in it, as she does in quite a few of his films. She's also excellent. Sarah Gilbert, who people might remember from Roseanne, sort of appears for a little bit. And yeah, as I say, it's just it's one of those films where it's kind of hard to sell, because it's not it's not a big action movie like Aliens. It's not got the wonderment of Jurassic Park, but there's just something about it that for me it kind of hits a lot of my interests, and I just fell in love with it at the time that I saw it, and from that day ever since, it has been my favorite movie of all time.
Do you know what? What a choice. That is right out of left field. I did not expect it to be high fidelity, but I absolutely love this film. It's a fantastic film. Sadly, not in my top 5, probably in my top 20. I like John Cusack as an actor. Sadly, he's become a bit of a crazy old man shouting at clouds on Twitter these days, sadly. But the film did have it all. Like you say, Lisa Bonet, I just remember that when she walks into the shop and they're all just gobsmacked and they're all just quiet, just staring at her. The first time you see Jack Black quiet in the whole film. They're such an odd friendship circle as well, aren't they? But they're all together. They're all kind of in their own way, a little bit miserable. It's the whole thing with his relationships. She visited and it's just quite funny. He's just this miserable guy. He reminds me of do you ever remember the show Black Books on Channel 4 with Bill Bailey and Dylan Moran? He just reminds me of Dylan Moran. Somebody walking his shop, you just go, just get out. I remember that there was it's got a great soundtrack as well. I do remember it had that song "Baby I Love Your Way" that was big kind of at that time, and it had just such a random mix of songs as well, which just helped just kind of bring it to life. Stevie, High Fidelity, is that a film you've seen?
Yeah, I remember it well. Really funny, well done. I love the snobbery. The lads working in the music shop are just, like you said, just really like slating anybody who comes in their choice. It's really funny. I think he had that wee spell. It's funny, when you started talking about it, Doug, I started thinking about Grosse Point Blank with Dan Aykroyd. Those two films really kind of, I must have seen them at the same time.
They're very similar in a lot of ways.
Aye,
similar vibe.
Really, really good. And then, do you know Dan Aykroyd was in Temple of Doom? Indiana Jones. You know at the start when he's escaping, he's been to the club and he's escaped with a girl and he's like got rid of the poison or whatever, and he's getting on a plane to like leave. There's a guy that ushers him onto the plane. That's Dan Aykroyd.
Look at
you know, nice to see his face. Yeah, it's a proper cameo. It's just I caught that recently. I was like, no way. Sorry, just when I thought of Grosse Point Blank, I thought of Dan Aykroyd. I was like, he was in the Temple of Doom. But yeah, that's a great choice. Like it's kind of different from the other films we've discussed, but yeah, really well done. Again, well crafted, great story, and quite true. As a guy who doesn't really learn anything, which is probably true for a lot of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely one of them at times. So.
It's just a typical record shop owner, isn't it? They're the kind of shops that you absolutely love going into, where they've got absolutely obscure stuff. It's sadly shops you don't see as much of these days. But it's just a very
still my dream job
story. Oh, 100%.
Still my dream job to own a record store or a CD store. I used to hang out in the local one in our town when I was like a teenager. We would go in and flick through the CDs and stand there for hours. And eventually one of my mates got a job there, so we ended up spending even longer just hanging out, talking to him. And so I think, it was almost like life imitating art at that point, just spending Saturdays for like literally 2 hours just in this record shop. feeling like I have to buy something every other week as well because I've been in there so often. But
yeah, record shops really were just a great place to go. Like, you just know the band Jurassic 5. I don't know if you're into your hip hop.
yeah,
The J5. I saw them in a record shop. They done a gig when I was traveling North America, and they played a gig in a record shop in San Francisco, and it was just, I was like, what am I doing here? And it was amazing. I think for his record, and they're just up there doing their thing. I was like, wow. But just really, I don't know if you would get that these days. You know what I mean? It's probably just a thing of the past.
Wow, there we go. Look, what a way to end tonight's pod. We've had some fantastic top fives. We've actually only pretty much discussed our 15 movies, and it's taken us nearly 2 hours because we are so passionate about what we're talking about. It's absolutely brilliant. There are definitely movies I'm going to watch, and there's going to be another pod coming shortly with another couple of pods. Tomo and Dino, they are going to put their top five out as well, so do look out for that. So this has been the first pod this evening of Box Office Bears. I'd just like to thank you, Stevie. Thank you ever so much for coming on and for your fantastic top five. Thank you for that, big man.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for hosting. You've been great. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure to discuss movies. And of course, Doug, thank you ever so much for your top five. And nice surprise there at number one. I did not expect High Fidelity, but no, absolutely brilliant, mate.
Thanks very much. Yep, absolutely loved it. Loved talking about your films, and could easily spend an hour, 2 hours doing it as well. So I look forward to the pods of the future as well.
Time always goes so quick when you're having fun, doesn't it? It's one of those. But don't worry, we are going to have more shows. We're looking at doing a show around about once a month. You never know, there could be more if there's more demand for it. But yeah, that's Box Office Bears. Do get your comments in, get your top five in on the comment section, as I'll reply to all of them as much as I can. And yeah, we'll discuss some of them on hopefully the next show. Also get some films and get some movies and we need to watch. You know, there might be something obscure that you've seen that not many people have seen. Get it in there. And you never know, we could all watch a film and then discuss it. So yeah, thanks everyone. And yeah, the Rangers Journal will be back with also your normal Rangers content. So do look out for all that stuff. But thanks to the guys, thanks everyone. And every night is a Rangers Journal night. So take care, everyone. And keep watching your movies. So good night. See you later.